This conference
And
will now be recorded.
we'll start by standing up and saying the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With roll call time, yes.
We moved her. Present.
Vice President Davis.
I'm here.
Mr. Duncan is on his board.
I think he's already,
Oh, you don't.
oh no, he was up at Dinosaur last I saw him.
He's on that, but it's his summer vacation, right? School's out, so he took off.
Actually, a summer vacation.
He took off.
All right.
And then an additional roll call, I'd love to reintroduce everyone to Hugo Bedarte,
How do you
one of
go?
our fine operations and maintenance employees. Summer months it's hot, so I'm thinking especially during the summer months, I'd like to have somebody from the operations crew just come into each one of our, have a second board meeting each month, maybe one when Alan shows up, and then bring in one staff member just to see what we do. Obviously, the actions taken here, some of them trickle down and impact what they do on a daily basis, but then I'll pick a number, 90% of the stuff we do doesn't impact them. So I think it's kind of important for them to see all the other stuff that we do, especially the board. So that's why he's here. Don't really expect a speech or anything, but Hugo's a great employee, a lot of experience. He's our go-to guy if we need any carpentry, right? Woodworking, help me out. Yeah, maybe you could do a little introduction.
I kind of almost feel I was.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
Go
excellent.
for it. Go for it.
So yeah, Hugo comes to us, he's a Borrego native, graduated school here. Went to the Army Reserves to serve some time in the motor pool there, so he's an ace mechanic to begin with. He was in charge of our, he's still kind of a code in charge of vehicle maintenance. His carpentry and construction skills are unmatched. He's a framer, but A to B, he can do it. So that's why he's really a valuable employee. He's one of our top operators in the field. He's pretty much a competent person on any job he's on. So it's a joy to have him on the crew.
Hold on. No speech.
Well, he might want to respond, but I don't know what he can say. Thank you.
Okay. So, welcome, and we're going to move to see if we have an agenda today. No one has any objections to our agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve it. Second, thank you. There's no questions. Anybody out there in the Ethernet have any comments on the agenda? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? On the agenda, any comments from the public and or requests for future agenda items? Silent world out there. How about comments from the directors? Any comments? Okay, how about correspondence? Mr. Cole, do you have any correspondence?
No.
Oh. So let's move down to section 2, the items for board consideration and possible action. Item 2A is cash flow and reserve fund projection.
That sounds exciting, doesn't it? Well, as a follow-up to the recent board actions in terms of approving the budget and the audit, it's kind of our annual, major financial actions that are taken by the board. The budget is setting the course for next year, audit telling what happened last year. One of the big issues that popped up was our reserve funds, and due to the acquisition of the water rights and other cash expenses, our reserve funds get down to around $4 million, 6 or 7 years from now. So we kind of thought it'd be good to have a theoretical discussion on how should we allocate that $4 million. If we get to that. The good news is it's based on a number of estimates. We'll have the opportunity to increase rates if that's appropriate with the next Prop 218 cycle before we're getting to the estimated spot where our reserve funds get down to 4 million. So we're in good shape, and 4 million is a relatively large amount of money. Back in the, I'll say, good old days. In the tough times, we had like $200,000 in the bank, which was about one payroll. So 4 million is great, but 4 million is not 7 million. So part of that, the board audit discussions really kind of revolve around kind of that dip. What do we do when we get down to 4 million? But then there's also that discussion that we had like 1 or 2 meetings ago about, well, gee, how are our existing reserve funds allocated? And Jessica has numbers that we kind of rolled up historically over time. It came from maybe kids records. And I think it's part of the ABC committee, right? We were talking about, well, it'd be cool if at the end of each year, we took whatever the net income was, whatever the net loss was, and adjusted our reserve funds accordingly. And the board really set reserve fund balances based on actual cash balances in the bank for each one of our accounts. And so we, in essence, start with let's say next month, probably the second meeting in July. I'd love to have the finance committee help me with this one. But we go over kind of and discuss some logic and come up with some recommendations for the board on these really 2 important topics. One being, how do we allocate the 7 million we have now? And then what do we do theoretically if and when we get to that $4 million low point 6 or 7 years from now? Really cool discussions. As I think about it, my initial thoughts are, well, in terms of my priorities, we need to make sure that the water's in the pipes and the toilets flush. Now, we obviously have contractual obligations. We borrow money. We borrow money from a bank, and then we are committed to have, debt reserves in terms of cash on hand and annual revenues to cover our debt service payments. So those are negotiable. We can't mess with those. So we would set those aside. But really, anything that's not contractually obligated, and honestly, maybe in the worst cases, we even rate the bond reserve fund if we had to in the worst of all worst cases. In the event that there were obviously extreme operational expenses. But once again, it's back to the making sure the water's in the pipes and the toilets. So, as I think about it, then funding operations, things like maybe rate stabilization become less important. Once again, this is if and when the big one and this financial crunch were to hit. What was it, maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago, we started talking about kind of the theoretical cost of if we had extensive leaks. And, I think at one point we're going to have $2 million in the bank, right, Jess? It was real bad after a while. So it was like, okay, so how many leaks can we fix for $2 million? So Alan and I talked about it. It was kind of, okay, don't sharpen your pencil. These are long-range budgetary numbers. So what's your worst case scenario? And now it's the typical leaks, 5 to 10 grand. If we do the work, it's okay, cool. Let's say it's 10 grand, and then it's probably 10 to 20 if outsiders do the work, then we have to hire contractors. Actual cost will probably be less, but those are good numbers for operating long-term planning purposes. So, if you crunch the numbers, that's worst case, $20,000 a repair. I don't know, 4 million divided by 20,000. 200? I'm not sure what. But that's a lot of leaks. And once again, that's worst case if a contractor can do everything. So could we theoretically have 100 breaks in the system?
Probably
It's
not.
possible, probably not, but anything is possible, right? We're fairly seismic.
That would come under earthquake.
These mountains were created for a reason, right? There's a lot of movement. So you never know. But so just as I'm thinking about it, going into the discussions I'd like to have with the committee, I think priorities are keeping the pipes full, making sure the toilets flush, and then everything else comes, but it becomes secondary. Once again, that's kind of if Armageddon were to happen. Now, if we're in the $4 million range still, and there is no imminent crisis, and we're still talking about how do we get the utility up to 4 million, that's the discussion I would like to have with you. Okay. And then even maybe we'll even come up with that. If what hits the fan, here's how we would prioritize. even if we have to go below 4 million.
I think a little risk management in there would be interesting.
So-
Committee is willing to discuss this.
I kind of put some initial thoughts into the board packet. That's a really simple spreadsheet. I just copied and pasted in the packet. And there's some differentiation between the accounts there. Some are fixed because we're contractually obligated to keep those reserves separate. Some are fixed because we're just kind of separate, like that town center sewer line item. That revenue is totally dependent upon somebody connecting and connecting to the system and no longer becoming a holder and becoming a user and paying the $712 wastewater treatment plant capacity expansion. So that's kind of out of our control. We don't really have any impact one way or the other directly. It's just if development happens to occur in town center. So some of those kind of take care of themselves. But then I think the important ones were the ones that aren't fixed. There were like 3 or 4 that were a percentage. I think I said percentage of non-fixed something. And those are kind of the important ones, the operating rate stabilization. So I just came up with it. My first simple idea was just come up with a percentage allocation between each one of those. It's 4. Obviously, the totals need to equal 100 when they're all done. So it was what, 50. But I started with 50% for the operating. So I think that's kind of a simple way and an effective way to put numbers to the chart, and then we can adjust the numbers a little bit to make everyone feel more comfortable one way or the other. I feel more comfortable, like Tammy brought up the O&M, the days of operating capital analysis. That's cool. So that's why I raised it. I think it was 40% in the previous version to 50. Is 50 the right number? I don't know. That's what we'll talk about.
Yes. I wonder if, in addition to worrying about watering the pipes and flush the toilets, we need to stick Sigma, well, not Sigma itself, more the concept of operating the basin management. Because we are, we're part of the water master. The water master has that responsibility. I'm not sure what if, well, the only effect that I can think of off the top of my head that would affect cash flow and reserves is risk management. So anyway, I'm just suggesting that we all need to be thinking about
And we
that.
always do that. But once again, our priorities, my priority is BWD. Sure, I care a lot about the basin, but priority number 1 is the water district and water district wells, water district infrastructure.
What is,
So when I'm thinking about Armageddon and us running out of money, I'm honestly not thinking about funding water master activities. Let's get to me. My priorities are talking BWD. Now, should the water master have some component in that number? Sure. And who knows? Maybe the board feels more comfortable leaving an emergency reserve for water master expenses. It couldn't be.
What kind
I could be talking to that. I'm just BWD first, and I'm sensitive to the water master of the basin, but man, this is the BWD related topic, long-term planning, emergency planning. Yeah, so.
but BWD is an important part of the water master.
We haven't seen how much work we have to members.
Hang on, Diane. What kind of expenses are you thinking would come out of the reserve?
Possibly needing heaven help us to do reverse osmosis to get rid of PFAS or other chemicals that we.
There's a placeholder in the capital improvement plan for
Right.
water treatment, so, yeah.
I feel like everything that we personally, and I asked the finance committee to consider this, but what Diane's asking, but personally, I think that everything that we could possibly do in the basin comes out of some fund that's already existing. That's my personal opinion, but,
So I was
So I
thinking
think maybe there's your thoughts are going to get incorporated in, because part of what we think about in the finance committee is the capital improvement plan and the costs it's going to put on the basin, which could mean water treatment, right? Which is exactly the point. So I think one of the things that we, finance committee and the water district need to think about is how soon would we possibly have to treat water? 2027, 2035, we'll just have to make some assessment on that and place it into our reserve planning. And if we feel like, I'm gonna make a really usual assumption, we'd have to start treating water in 2026, which I don't think is the case. But then let's go, okay, then what does that mean? We have to like raise money, we sort of ripple through the whole plan.
Right.
So I do think we will, that kind of concern is part of what I think the finance committee will be looking at, is which comes directly out of the capital improvement plan. And when do we put that we need to start treating water expense in our future? Right. But if you think of something else in addition, like other than treating water, that could be a big dollar thing, make sure Jeff knows so that when we start talking in July, we'll just pick it, maybe it's gonna be 2040. I mean, I don't know, we the board's gonna come up with something. But if those big guys, if there's just something else other than treating water that comes to mind.
Well, and what comes with treating PFAS? I mean, these are reverse osmosis. Well, and I mean, is there going to be grant funding? You know, it's hard to imagine, I know that there's such a thing as unfunded all the time, but, yeah, there would be hopefully when they say you must start, moving PFAS from water.
I think let's address it as early as we can. Let's not make it a mystery. I think it's important for us to test our wells. I'll fast track some of my GM report, but Alan did the research and it's.
He schedules to start PFAS testing in April of 2024.
Next year.
We've already been in contact with Babcock Labs and spoke with them, but the EPA will supply us with the bottles and pay for the testing, which I'm understanding is quite expensive.
Is that,
$500 per sample,
is that,
which is each source, so every well.
would
we
that
have
be
9
creating
wells.
a base, is that the idea to create a baseline?
Yeah, we would start with just a baseline thing, and
And
then
would they, is that the only time they're going to pay for it? Is that one?
they're going to pay for every 6 months. They'll pay for sampling every 6 months, and then there's another way to establish if it's here or not.
So, and to me, I don't want to wait a year for these or whatever that is, like months now for those results, $500.
Well, it's per source, Jeff.
Yeah, okay. Times 9, but I'm let's start with 3 or 4. Well, 18, let's spend $2,000. That's only 3. Let's add one more. Let's spend $2,000 now just to know if it's there. Because just honestly, the PFAS, there's money being thrown at PFAS, and guess what? It's for fire stations and military bases where a lot of the foam was used for firefighting purposes. And sure, it can pop up here. I've done a little bit of research with one farmer that we've come to know very well. They've only done foliar applications of fertilizers in the past, which I think is better. That would decrease the likelihood of it making it into the basin if there happened to be PFAS in the fertilizers they were using. The farmer I was talking to didn't know if there was PFAS in his fertilizers or not, but they sprayed the leaves. They don't inject it into the source water, the irrigation water. Some might, but maybe they can, or the one part we know might not be that much different. So I don't stay awake personally at night about PFAS, but let's try to figure out if it is a problem or not. And so let's hit 4 wells, then maybe the 4th there might be the best example of it. It's going to be anywhere based on what we see with other water quality constituents. It will likely be there.
I think it'd be huge to at least get a couple samples from the community source water as well.
No, for sure. Yeah, well, 18's ours, right? That's the closest one to the area of concern. Furthest to the north.
9 and 18 would be a couple of good examples.
Well, maybe, I was going to say down into the central. But,
Well, then we could go ahead and just do a rotation. I could do a northern, central, and southern. Wells that way would spread the cost out a little bit.
Stop at the high school. Fine.
We could check their well. That would be
That's
very.
the beginning of the central.
I would be interested just to see if there's something that.
Okay.
So, board, do you want to direct, we need to vote on that?
It's not on the agenda exactly. It's well within my standing authority. I'm just planning on doing it. And after this, I'll work with the water quality committee on refining the location.
Okay.
I think, is that you again?
Is that you again? Okay.
And I'll check with Trey in terms of his initial thoughts on what we'll do.
Well, I like the idea of the high school and Wellington and the wells that we just have up there.
And just a little footnote, related but not related, when West Coast staff was out here recently, we looked at some of the big agricultural wells that we're acquiring, and I was always under the assumption that taking water quality samples was relatively easy. I just bring this sump pump, throw it in, suck out 3 well casing volumes, and you have water. Well, it's not that simple. The pumps that are needed are big, you know, and so pulling water quality samples just on random abandoned wells isn't as simple as, I'm not even a layperson, I should know that, but it's not as simple as I thought. So the good news is some of the wells on the property we purchased are still connected. If they're not connected, you still even have big motors with multiple rainbirds spraying the water, you know, a lot of water coming up and going somewhere. Now, the good news is if we do it relatively quickly, these wells are still connected to the irrigation system, so we can run the big wells. And so it'd be relatively easy to take a sample. So we're planning on doing that relatively quickly. I just want to let Alan know, just because the people that have run those wells are still here. They said they'll help us fire them up to take a water sample. So I'd like to take advantage of that. And we'll contact the owner. He's a cool guy. He's one of my new best friends. So it's important that, you know, the infrastructure is in place to take the sample. And just like this, I'll just pick any hole in the ground and just throw it a sump pump and you can pull a sample out. It's not that simple, especially because of the depth of the water. It's got to pump it up, whatever, 150 feet, 200 feet. That's a long way for a little pump to use.
All right, so we'll go forward with that plan. I like that. I'm sure they're in, especially. Okay, so anything else on the reserve fund?
So basically, we're forwarding this important topic to the
Finance committee. They agreed to meet on that with you and Jessica.
probably reporting back the second meeting in July.
Or even August. Actually.
Whatever it is. We're planning on the second one.
All right.
Thank you.
2B is the fiscal year 2023-24 administration report, and there's a lot there. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam President. Each time the door opens, Andrea's going to come walking in.
I know.
Yeah.
Dark pockets.
Just kind of car problems, but no, I looked up and she's on the screen. She went out. I think the first year after my 7 years, that she said to call in. Is that true, Andrea? You better tell me you had a flat tire this morning or something. If you were planning on coming out,
Sort of think about.
you're muted. Turn it up. That's Andrea Rose.
Yeah.
She's too ashamed to even speak.
Andrew?
Without coming out.
Can you hear me?
Hello. We miss
Hi,
you.
good
We
morning.
miss you.
And sorry, this is kind of echoey for me. I don't know how it is for you guys.
Totally clear.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm here this morning to present the 2 CFD items and the 4 fixed charges. These are items that we bring every year that we need to take to the County of San Diego. Sorry, I'm having a hard time with the echo.
Other people.
So with the 2 CFDs, there's CFD 2007-1 and 2017-1. And we are levying on developed property in 2007-1 and on the undeveloped property in 2017-1. These are very similar to what we did last year, so not sure if folks have questions. But basically, this is the standard levy. We're paying debt service, we're paying administration. The CFD 2007-1 levy is going to be on the county tax rolls, and the 2017-1 will be direct bills. I'm happy to talk more on the CFDs if folks have questions.
Okay. And Andrea, we have a couple of new members, and I want to make sure they don't have any questions about the Melrose. Are you good? Okay, thank you. You can go on. We're ready.
Perfect. So then we also have the 4 fixed charges. There's the water availability standby charge that basically applies to all of the property except for ID1 and ID3. ID1 and ID3 have their own separate charges that are also being levied. And then there's a pest control standby charge that applies to the bulk of the district. And again, these are very similar to what was done last year. And I can go into more detail, answer more questions if folks have them.
Any questions from the board? We have a question here.
I have a couple. First one is, has there been any change in the number of parcels that appear in either of these, or all 6 of these things?
So for this fixed charges, we will update that research when we get the final county assessor roll, which comes out in July. So right now, the numbers are based on no changes from last year.
Okay.
And on the CFDs, likewise, there's not any changes.
Okay. I don't know if you have our board packet, but it's page 14 of 323. 323, yeah. I'll read what it says. As indicated in the study, Raptelis RFC concluded that based on the benefit, the amount charged to the parcels being charged to 66,000 per parcel should be increased, and that the amount charged to the remaining 27 parcels should be decreased. Got that paragraph? Okay, so this next sentence. However, since the district cannot increase a parcel's charge without going through a Prop 218 ballot proceeding, the district has kept the $66 per parcel charged unchanged. We did go through a 218 process and we did change the rate, so I don't understand that sentence.
That would probably be more of an internal question, but in the past rate studies, these were not looked at. So it was before I was here, and Jeff and I have been talking about it a lot, and we do plan to incorporate these in the upcoming one. But these charges were not considered by Raptelis in the last rate study. So that needs to be done.
Okay. Then the next question is, how come we have, so if you total the number of water availability parcels, which is what? Ones 01, 02, and 04, there's 4,665 parcels that are going to be taxed. And then you look at the pest control, which is 03, there's 4,700 parcels. So I'm just curious why we have more parcels being taxed for pest control than for water availability.
And I know we looked at that last year as well. I think part of that is the CFD property that I think don't pay the water availability, and there were some other parcels that weren't taxable, but were paying the pest control.
Any answer to that, or it's just?
They're different geographic areas.
Oh, all right.
Everybody doesn't pay the same fees district-wide. Based on the history, like the Borrego Springs Resort area, they're the ones that have this standby parcel charge. We compare to that when we assume control of the CS. Rams Hill has I don't know all the details. Gnat control up there, and flood control. So they have different components that the Rams Hill property owners pay. So they're not consistent throughout the basin. Each of these areas that we have have different rules. Now, some of them, so it's just different geographic areas for each one of these different charges because we inherited those when we consolidated different organizations, especially the CSD, most recently.
The difference between the 4,665 and the 4,700 are
This
parcels that don't have water.
parcels that aren't subject to the fee because they are in a different geographic area that's subject to different rate structure based on the rules that were in effect. Those rules were created before we assumed control. When we assumed control, the Borrego Springs Resort property owners, all those vacant lots, were already paying a per parcel standby fee. Just that area. So, yeah.
So
Well, just different areas. The different areas have different counts of parcels because they're not the same geographic area. And she said it's probably the CSD. What's the difference? 30 something parcels. It's probably the 30 parcels that are owned by the CSD that aren't subject to whatever one of those two charges we were talking about.
I'll take it off. Why do we need to have a surplus fund? This is page 230 of 323. It's just the concept of why do we have to have this concept of a surplus fund? And flip to page 230. You can see it.
I assume, are you talking about the CFD?
Yeah.
And it's because there's funds that are left over each year as a result of interest earnings and delinquency contingencies and other things. And so the money that's left over is just rolled over to the following year.
Okay. And then page 230, the delinquency charge, 4,465, is that then applied to all the taxpayers who cover that? What happens to that?
The rate and method allows us to add a delinquency contingency that then does get spread to everybody. And so that's part of what rolls back in the following year when the property taxes are paid.
Okay. So this means if I live in Rams Hill, I'm going to see three things on my tax bill. This fund 641502, which is water, sewer, and flood. Fund 641503, which is pest control. And CFD 2007-1, which is a levy. I'll see three separate line items on my tax collector bill. That's how this works.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm frustrated because I can't find it. I didn't mark it last night. But I noticed one place the property was called Montesoro. And it is now Rams Hill. Is that important to change?
It has to do with what the CFD was called when it was formed.
Came before Montesoro, but never mind.
So we're stuck with Montesoro.
Anybody else have any questions? I thought it was Rams Hill originally when it went to numbers. Okay. So that's the gist of it, right, Andrea? That's everything?
That's everything. need you to approve the resolutions so that we can send them to the County of San Diego.
All right, does anyone, so then I have one more question. Are we, you also said, Andrea, that in July you're going to update this with the new information from the county. Are we approving a resolution without those updates?
Year,
I believe that's how it's worked.
so you make the changes in the next fiscal year or in this fiscal year?
No, we will make the changes and we'll send an updated memo to Jessica.
So, which is the one that, so this goes to the tax roll, we give this to the county, right? The county puts this on the tax roll.
Yes.
Correct.
So,
All except for the CFD 2017-1.
right. So when you do the updates in July, do those updates go to the county or do we save those for another year?
We don't submit to the county until after we do that update.
Motion is to do this thing with the July updates in it.
Yes. All right, so we have the resolution before us. Steve, do I need to read the whole title of the resolution for each one?
That would be best, if you don't mind. Or you could have the clerk, you could have Jeff or Jessica read it too. You don't have to read it.
I don't mind. Okay. The first resolution is in B4. It's the resolution number 2023-0602. The resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District restating and adopting a statement of investment policy. Does anybody have any? We need a motion to approve that. So moved. One second. Thank you. Moved by Tammy, seconded by Gina. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Any comments from the public? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of approving resolution number 2023-06-02, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The next resolution is number B5, the resolution number 2023-0603. The resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District, San Diego County, California, levying standby charges and or acreage assessments to defray the cost of operations and maintenance of the district, and requesting the levy and collection of said standby charges and or acreage assessments on land within the district for the fiscal year 2023-2024.
I move we adopt this with any update to the APNs that we pick up in July.
So we have a motion by Tammy, seconded by Gina to approve resolution 2023-06-03 with the APN updates that will be provided in July. Any discussion? Anything from the Ethernet gallery? All right, I'm going to call the question on resolution number 2023-0603. Any, if you approve, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution is in B6 is the resolution number 2023-06-04. The resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District, San Diego County, California, levying standby charges and our acreage assessments to defray the cost of operations and maintenance of the district, and to pay cost of operations and maintenance for improvement district number 1, and requesting the levy and collection of said standby charges and our acreage assessments on certain land in improvement district number 1 for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion with the updates.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tammy. Any discussion on this resolution or questions? Hearing none, I will call the question for resolution number 2023-0604, along with additional lands that may be included in the July assessment. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention?
Can you go?
Resolution number 2023-0605, the resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District, San Diego County, California, levying charges and our acreage assessments to defray the cost of providing pest control services by the district and requesting levy and collection of said charges and our acreage assessments for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Do I hear a motion to accept that resolution?
I so move with updates that we'll get in July.
Okay, second. Thank you. Any discussion on that? That was the one that you had. Okay. So, any questions or comments from the Ethernet? We'll go for call the question for resolution number 2023-06-05. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Goes to approval. B8 is the resolution number 2023-06-06. The resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District, San Diego, California, levying standby charges and our acreage assessments to defray the cost of operating and maintaining the water facilities with improvement district number 3 of the district and requesting the levy and collection of standby charges and our acreage assessments for the fiscal year 2023-2024. We would approve that, which would be, with the July dates. Okay. Any questions or comments from the directors or the Ethernet? If not, I will call the question on resolution number 2023-06-06. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? That one passes as well. Got B9, which is resolution number 2023-06-07. The resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District acting as the legislative body of the Community Facilities District number 2017-1 of the district number 20 of the Borrego Water District, authorizing the levy of special taxes within Community Facilities District number 2017-1 for the fiscal year 2023-2024.
I move we accept this with any possible updates that can happen in July.
Second. Gina? Is there any discussion or questions on resolution number 2023-06-07? Not, I'll call the question. All in favor of resolution number 2023-06-07 that will include July updates, if any, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That one passes. And finally, B10 is the resolution number 2023-06-08, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Borrego Water District, acting as a legislative body of Community Facilities number 22007-1 of the Borrego Water District, authorizing the levy of special taxes within Community Facilities District number 2007-1 for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Make that motion. Okay, second. Thank you. Any discussions or questions on resolution number 2023-06-08? Speak now. Hearing none, I'm going to call the question for resolution number 2023-06-08 that will include any updates from the July funerals. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay. All the resolutions are approved. Thank you.
I'm not sure if it's Andrew or Jeff. Community Facilities District, is that a LAFCO sector? Who creates community facilities? how can I learn more about them?
LAFCO wouldn't have created it initially.
Can I answer that, Mr. President, or Madam President, sorry? Yeah, no, a community facilities district is just a financing mechanism, and so they're created by individual public agencies like water districts. So it's just a financing scheme based on the way the government code is written, so LAFCO is not involved.
They had water and sewer service, right, Steve? So how did that private entity get the authority to provide water and sewer service? I mean, it wasn't just purely financing. I mean, they had that engineer, and David Dale came from them, moved over and worked for us. I mean, it was a functioning organization.
Yeah, so LAFCO only has authority over public agencies. It does not have authority over private utilities. So if a private utility is a profit-making institution like, Southern California Edison, then they're regulated by the Public Utilities Commission of the state. And if they're a nonprofit like a mutual water company, they're not subject to regulation except on the water quality side. Does that make sense?
There's none.
So basically, LAFCO gave the authority for them to be in our service area, but for the CFD for the low, like the financing stuff, that can be done by the agency without LAFCO. So it's like two separate things.
Right. To annex, so when you annex that area into the Borrego Water District, that is a LAFCO action to annex because they made you, the public agency service area, bigger. So that's LAFCO's role.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry I asked, but.
Stop that.
Okay. All right, move to item 2E, which is the Borrego Springs Sub-Basin Water Master Board. And I am sorry, but I was not at the last meeting.
That was quite a week.
So maybe you can give us a little report.
I'm also sorry he's not here.
But actually, I'm not sorry for him because he's having a good time.
So let's see, the week started off with Sam, Andy, and the whole crew came out a day early. This isn't part of the Water Master board meeting. Directly to take it out. We did a tour of the Bower property. It was board meeting day. I think they were out there until they had to take off to get ready to go to the open house. So David Bower tried really hard to make it, but couldn't make it while Sam and Andy were still here. But then Steve and I waited for him. So David Bower came down the hill. Said he drove the fastest he has ever driven to Borrego Springs. He tried really hard because he's just been talking to Sam and Andy about water master related stuff. And the good news is we all got a chance to go to the open house and talk to Sam.
Oh, that's good.
But to me, the important part was getting to talk to Sam and Andy about the water quality monitoring on these big wells. And that's when Sam was explaining to me it's really not that simple. And what do you do with all the water that these big pumps create? Because I just didn't think about big volumes of water being needed to be pumped to make these work. And then the elevation between the groundwater and the surface elevation, that draw that's needed to pump it up, that elevation is also a big challenge. So I learned a little bit myself about water quality monitoring and just why it's important to do these samples. And John Peterson's always been talking about using production wells, which is important because the water is fresh, but then it's also a lot easier to fix. Now, the engineers can do it. Dudek and others, and West Coast now, do take the pumps out there, or do pump out abandoned wells or monitoring wells for water quality sampling. It does and can happen, but just a lot easier if the production wells are in place. Let's see, Steve and I had dinner with Sam and Andy and Lauren Tuesday night. Yeah, because the meeting was Wednesday. Then the open house started at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. When I was there, it was the usual cast of characters. John Peterson had his water quality maps out. The one Esmeralda he took off our wall 4 months ago. It's 3 foot by 4 foot. He carries it with him wherever he goes. He's got Post-its and circles and squares and stuff all over it. So, you were sharing is.
Was it a light turnout for the open house, or was it? I mean, it was possible.
I think it was like, there were not many just members of the public there.
I don't think it was well publicized.
No,
If they rely on email.
that's what I'm thinking. I think the water master needs to do a lot more active outreach on our end. And, yeah.
Yeah, because we know when it's happening, so we know there's going to be another one in 6 months, so right, should have an outreach plan figured out for the month leading up to the next one.
And
How about I suggest staff member to staff member, Westfields, that to be really effective and to get good participation, we need to.
outreach needs work.
It's not necessarily that much more difficult, it's just earlier and more often in different outlets, and
Well, you know,
Facebook.
we all know that no matter how many different ways we use, people still bring it. But I mean, just the fact that there should have been a flyer for social media and or, I don't know, maybe there was something in the Borrego Sun. I don't know. So it was a community secret. So, yeah, so how did I heard that the budget was passed in the meeting itself? And in the water master meeting. Anything else happened that was of interest?
The UCI water sampling discussion.
They came to a
It was
compromise,
a
right?
4-to-1 yes, with the caveat that in essence, the water master would need to get authorization from each private member to sample for the isotope. That just doing it didn't feel right, so we should ask for permission from each well owner, which.
Informed consent. Not a bad idea.
So it was a 4-1 vote in favor of the Tyler billing. That just, that we the water master just should be. That's happening. And then we'll be coordinating with Tyler, with Travis, about sampling our wells for isotopes for sure. Anything else?
Jim Bennett brought up, starting to think about water quality optimization. So that got out there coming from the water master. You know, water quality optimization program is the name of, in the sustainability plan, management plan. What we're going to do in terms of managing.
It's even a judgment too, that term's used in the judgment. Optimization.
And there is,
It's a must.
actually, they created a connection between the signal and judgment.
But they didn't really take action. So it's 18 months away, but really it's pretty close. By then there will be at least 3 sets of data on that probably would be identifying key trends and undesirable results. So that will become clear. And they also presented the water quality, right, results of the last water quality.
Trey, do you have anything that you would like to report from the TAC or water master?
Sure, I can report that we are still undertaking our evaluation of the farm process, and the metered and unmetered data using ET with the TAC. We're also in the process of doing some additional technical evaluation of the water quality information. I don't have a whole much to present on the last board meeting. Unfortunately, I could not make it in person, and it was pretty challenging to hear the meeting over the internet. So I'll have to defer to others who are actually in person. Just was not able to catch everything at the meeting. But we should have some updates hopefully for the next July board meeting regarding water quality in the basin.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the water? Okay, well, then we're going to go down to the section 3, the board committee reports. If there are any that need to be reported on. Any committee reports from the ad hoc or standing?
Want to chat about the cyber in your section?
It is on my list, but okay.
There's work in the cyber, cyber security, risk management, and just normal section.
Okay, perfect. Let's go down into section 4, the staff and departmental reports. We have the monthly water production and operations reports.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Our water production went up a little bit this month. May we produced a little over 15 acre feet. June was about 17 acre feet. I think it's kind of in hand with weather conditions changing and whatnot.
Been pretty mild.
So they went from 15 to 17. So when I look back historically, it's pretty much in line. Lots of stuff going on in the district. The twin tanks and Ramsdale 2 tank are nearing completion. Should be completed by the end of the week, according to Jennifer from Superior Tank. We're finishing up the work at twin tanks and Ramsdale. We'll be completing the work this week. Plans to perform vacuum testing on both tanks next week.
Yeah, repeat that. So
So
one thing, I was telling somebody about this vacuum testing. that
Yeah.
they want bolt.
they test every bolt inside the tank. They do a vacuum test to make sure it doesn't leak
Before they put water
before we water it. So
They're doing it this week,
next week,
next week?
yeah, they'll be completing all the.
in. There was one was missing.
I have to say, I really like the new tank where the twin tanks are. It's the profile and the color are so much nicer.
Yeah, it'll look really good when we get the other tanks removed.
You said Ramsdale 2, it's almost done?
So 2 is
Like
close to,
physically?
yeah. Yeah, the contractor's done all the piping connections. We're pressure testing today up there, and I'll grab the back T sample after we flush the lines, just for the state inspector, and we'll see that. I'm scheduling right now inspections with DDW to come out and look at the tanks.
Division of Drinking Water.
This is drinking water. Yeah, it's Imperial Division of Drinking Water, Imperial District. Working with her, and I'm also working with them on permitting for the engine swap at the swap. I'll start the permit process on that this week or coming next week. Anywho, so you should see those tanks filled with water about 48 hours after they go in and complete disinfect the interior of the tank as well. And then I'll take samples for odor, taste, back T, E. coli, platelet count, several different things we have to test for what the state drinking water requires us. So there's that project, that's coming along nicely.
You have, because there's new pipes to the new tanks. Do you have to flush those as part of this whole
Yeah,
thing?
we hyperchlorinated, then we flush, and then we get a back T residual, and it tells us there's no contamination in the pipe. So just to cover our butts. Well 4 has been completely removed and converted to a monitoring well. Well 10, we're underway with the cleaning, swabbing. They completed that, so we'll get another video of that well probably within a couple of weeks. Take a look at what it looks like after the cleaning. We're going to be putting new pump, column pipe, pump shaft, drive shaft. We're going to modify the pump motor from well 4 to save the district around $20,000. We're going to refurbish it, put it at well 10. We're going to use some of the casing from well 4 because not casing, but the column pipe, because it was only about 7 years old, which is going to go to well 8. We found the problem with well 8 was had a water leak when you turned it on right below the wellhead, and between the wellhead and the floor well house. So we assumed there was a leak in that hole in the pipe just underneath the concrete. And that's indeed what we found was 10 feet down where the chlorinator tube goes down. They had used a bushing and pushed it up to an 1.25 inch pipe, which for one reason I don't know, but it was broken right there at that point, 10 feet down. We found 2 half-dollar size holes in the pipe right there. So instead of the chlorine being delivered into the water table through a PVC pipe, it was just running around right at the top of the well and running down the steel column pipe. So we're going to change that with pipe we're going to salvage from Ford, and we're rebuilding the pump on it, and we're going to do anything else other than change a couple of valves at well.
How did you figure out there was a leak?
It was an educated guess, because of where it was located, you could actually see the water just when you turn the well on, the water would come up, it's just running out on the floor.
Oh, maybe there was a leak someplace.
So we knew it was fairly close to the surface, but every time we turned the well on, a full 8-inch column of pipe was coming up, and it's just gushing out of these 2 50-cent size wells right at the top. So that made our pump efficiency not as good as it should be. But the pump efficiency was bad anyway on that, so it was time to go ahead and put a new pump. So we'll have a couple of nice refurbished wells within a couple of months, and I'll be back in service and refurbished. Well 15 project is moving along nicely. The power's in. It's all been inspected. I drafted a letter to SDG yesterday on them. We looked at the facilities and it's ready to be energized. So that's in the works. The panels are all set. The pump and stuff's all on the ground. So our next project out there for our crew is build the flush pond and run the piping to the flush pond, make up the piping connection to the BWD distribution line, which is already on site. And then we have to do testing through DDW. We'll have to do Title 22 every quarter. And whatever else they're going to ask me for, we just have to do. It's the same thing with that goes on for a year, and then we drop off just a routine vacuum samples. Anything else they call for throughout the year, there's a website that I go on. It tells me what testing is needed, when it's needed, and if it's late or due or whatever. But it's a very handy tool.
Have you decided where you're going to build the flush pond?
It'll be in the southeast corner of the fence.
Within the fence.
Within the fence.
Am I right that the flush ponds are sometimes outside the fence?
And we have well 12 that's outside the fence. Well 5 is outside the fence. We've put up at well 5. We put up some protective fencing to keep people with reflectors on it. It's not really secure, but people go over there and like to watch the birds.
Yeah.
So we just want to let them know that you're not supposed to be in here for one. We have every site posted saying no trespassing. So we're pretty much covered as far as security. The only other thing we could do is actually put chain link fences up and really secure them. Comes a problem then for us for maintenance is we have to go in and out to get remove plants and bushes and things that germinate in the plants. So been pretty successful the way it is so far. Well, it's also like that. Yeah, no sense like that. So we have several.
I'm just wondering how hard like coyotes will work to get to that water.
Well, that's kind of the reason I like to have it open.
Digging under the fences and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think we have too much trouble with that. We don't want to look that way.
Nice to have it available.
Yeah.
I guess that's about all I have to say about, production. Other than the guys do a great job on the crew reading meters and any emergencies. We had a couple of emergencies come up the last month. Sun and Shadows, we had a broken water main that they had to fix. We still have to do paving repairs out there. Anything else, Hugo? You think of anything else we did this month? Just a couple of repairs out in the field, I think, breaks. All due to old age, old valves, etc. We did a hydrant replacement a few weeks ago and just did the shutdown to change the hydrant because there's no valve on the hydrant. So we had to install a whole new T in the line a new shut-off valve and a hydrant. Upon shutting the whole neighborhood down to do this, we broke another valve in the street. So that afternoon, we did a couple repairs. But the guys shine. They know what to do. Don't have to tell them. They react. So I'm really proud of the way they do things.
So I happen to know that in the SDG&E outage, it was, that moved around that Hugo was the guy that was.
Hugo's been on call for both the major outages we had, unfortunately.
So maybe between the two of you, can you describe like what you guys have to do when there's no power, but we still got water pressure as customers, how you keep water pressure in the system without power?
I mean, basically, is the way the system's designed, that the tanks are full, everybody has water pressure. So that's our main goal, is just keep the tanks full. So in this case, we use well 11 because we have a standby diesel engine that will actually run the pump. And then if we need water, say at Twin Tanks, we have our standby generator that will pull over there and connect and actually power the well. We have a transfer switch that goes from SDG&E or generator, put the switch in the right position, turn it on, and the well fires up, and basically we just keep the tanks full of water. That's all it has to be done. It's simple, but it's not simple.
How do you keep from, do you have SCADA working? How do you keep from overflowing?
We just keep an eye on it manually. There's a SCADA that's not working at the time. We did just purchase a couple months ago a new standby generator, 20 kWs, which will power all of our SCADA next door, so we can use that. It's a really super quiet diesel engine. We can use that to keep the SCADA online so we can see what's going on. And the other purpose we bought the generators, we can use it in any emergency to provide power. But mostly our booster station for Indian Head Ranch, because once that well 18 goes away in the future, which it will, then we'll solely provide water to that Indian Head tank with our booster station. So we're going to do a switch gear upgrade on that to allow us to use that new generator at that place. It's 480 volts. That way my staff doesn't have to go and switch wires and do stuff that they're not qualified to do.
Where is that booster station?
It's on Borrego Springs Road as you're going towards Indian Head Ranch on the left-hand side.
It's like by the Jeep kind of.
It's just before the
That
Jeep.
used to have all the oleanders.
Yeah,
Right.
we've gotten all of our sites pretty much removed all the oleanders and plants.
Thank you.
Water intensive purposes, having to water them and trim them. That way the problem's gone. It alleviates that area for them. They want to break in. You drive by and you see oleanders, you don't see somebody. So this kind of helps bring that down as well. Yeah, it's fun.
I just like the idea of removing all the
They're really not that beneficial of a plant. They just don't do much for anything.
Poisonous.
They're poisonous. So
Big props to Alan. I mean, obviously he's telling us about everything he's doing. And he's actually being paid to bail out of David's Common, administering the reservoir projects.
Well,
Thank you.
we
So,
really
really
appreciate
important
it.
stuff. So,
thank you
and
guys.
Hugo,
No
we
joke.
thank you for all that you're doing. You know, Alan regularly sings the praises of this. So, you know,
They're all good. All of them are just, you don't have to tell them to do anything. They just know. So I mean, that's what we
the best
want.
time, huh?
That's the best part.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
thanks, Alan.
How about the wastewater production control report, Mr. Martinez?
Good morning again to everybody.
Right.
Just I got a normal operations. I got a couple issues. My muffin muscle, which is a grinder at the entrance, it quit working. I got an estimate to try to rebuild it, $8,000, $10,000 to buy a new one. And like, I'm just buying a new one with the warranty, you know? It's only $2,000 difference. And then I assigned the company that put the lift station together. They usually come like every other year. So they were here yesterday. They pull out the 2 submersible pumps out of the lift station. Usually when they come every 2 years, they service them. They drain the oil out of the pumps, they have oil inside, they service impellers, and then they have on the side of the big pump, they have a little pump that is going in the water all the time on the bottom. So one of them, that little pump, they quit working. So they're gonna send me a quote, how much it's gonna cost me to replace it. And so they came down yesterday, they said, oh, the pump's been fine, there's nothing wrong with it, just a little pump. And then, so as soon as I get the quote, then we'll come back and redo it. Because I have an extra one that I purchased about 2 years ago, and it's there, and I was asking him, just take it apart, you know, it's a brand new pump, go over and take it apart. I said, okay, well, just give me the quote then. So you can put the little pump on. Yeah, and then other than that, I mean, the average flow for last month, it was 59,000, 93,000, the highest only one day. So yeah, it's getting really slow. Right now, like 45,000, my average for the whole month. It's really slow.
It's really quiet.
Yeah, it's quiet, you know. And then I want to thank Alan because the crew is helping me. We going to install a new flow meter for Rumsfeld so we can know exactly how much water they're discharging. So we're almost done with the trench. We bought all the conduit so we can run a separate line because we don't want to run the wire through all the old conduits where there's electrical wire that a lot of them, they already lost their insulation. So it's kind of risky to go into those bulk boxes, get in and try to push and pull wire. So I decided, you know what, it's better to spend $800, I'll do a new trench, I'll run my new wire all the way to the SCADA, and then I don't have to worry about it. So that's, you know, like the crew's helping me with that. And hopefully by next week, we should have it done and see what happens.
A lot of great wells too, they're done.
Yeah, all the wells are done. They came down last week. They took samples. I went over there with them, like you were saying, Jeff, E. coli, and all those samples. I mean, it takes time. So I was, you know, like he was asking me, so you're going to be sampling the well? I said, yeah. So how are you going to do it? I said, well, I don't know how to do it. You know, because once we submit all these to the state, they're going to decide how often we're going to take samples and what kind of samples they're looking for. So I may gonna have to buy a little trailer with a generator because the one that I sample right now, it's only 40 feet deep. So one of these ones is 100 feet deep. And the 40 feet I do it manually. I have like a brass nipple with a cap and a rope and I go down. And I gotta pull the water out and I fill my container. So, you know, this one now is gonna be 3 more wells. So that I have to sample for every single one. So, you know, either Alan's gonna have to be patient with me and wait for me a couple hours before I get all the samples or do something different. So when I take them all, you know, it's gonna take a little more time.
You don't have to run water through the well and flush it before you take samples?
Certainly that's the way you should do it. But since these ones are monitored wells, they're not too concerned about E. coli or bacteria. They're more concerned about nitrates and TDS. So for those, you know, like it doesn't really matter. And my only concern that I have when I went with them 2 weeks ago, the pH of one of them is 11. So you guys are gonna get a report from Tuesday. So I hope it's not gonna be that high because my discharge pH, it can be higher than 9. So I don't know if that's gonna be like, hey, is that us contributing to the 11 milligrams per liter on the pH, or that's water from the sink? You know, it will be a lot of questions.
What could cause the pH to drop like that?
You know, they think that because there was no water till they hit 100 feet deep, they had to run concrete on the site. So they're thinking that hopefully in a couple months, that 11 is going to be gone and it's going to drop. So, you know, and they're going to include all that in the report so that the state will see it and then see what happens.
Hold on.
pH from the concrete, right?
Yeah.
So you have one that's 100 feet and then how?
Well, this is what happened. Because I was back and forth with them, they hit water 100 feet. And then after they came back, now the water's at 40 feet. Yeah, so I mean, like, and at the same time, I'm thinking, like, are we creating other problems or are we simply somebody else's water? You know, it's a weird, that's why we're supposed to have 2 wells on each side. The first side, it went 120 something feet, there was no water. Until they hit like 129, and then the water came up. So they decided, okay, on this one, we want to do 1 well. They jumped to the next side, which is the east side of the wash. Over there, they hit water 45 feet. So they did 2 wells. The one on the north side, it was the same situation, 80 feet, I think, and then they hit the water, so they did only 1 well. So we have 2 ones.
So it's a total of 4 monitoring wells? then?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the one that was there, it's 1, and then they did 3 more.
Isn't the wastewater monitoring well, but did that big easement? The original plan was to put in 6 new wells,
Uh-huh.
3 pairs. So are there 6?
Yeah, because, you know, like, there was, it doesn't make sense to have another well 40 feet, but there's no water. The original plan was 2 wells on each side.
Yeah.
One was 40 feet, yeah, 140 feet and the other 100 feet. So the 140 feet, no water. They keep going, there was no water until they hit 120 something feet, and then the water came all the way to 40 feet.
So there was no reason to have a shallow well.
Yes. And again, they're gonna, I think the Adriana, that it's the engineer that is in charge of our chapter, she okayed it, I think, with them. They said, okay, no problem. But at the end of the day, you know, Due Date is gonna do like a full report, and they're gonna do all that. And then they can always, you know, the original board, they can always be like, no, we want to know the well. Hopefully not, but we see. We're not gonna know until we submit the whole report.
So what happened, Tammy, is originally those 3 sets of 2 wells were right next to the percolation ponds. We keep felt that those locations might impact their future use of the property, so we moved them.
No, could be the easements.
Yeah, so we moved them, you know, hundreds of feet away. So it's that geographic change that changes the hydraulics and makes the groundwater table so much lower. The further you get away from the percolation ponds, the lower the groundwater table.
Because the one that is on the north side, basically it's in the sink. It's like, way over there. And I'm hoping that whenever they come every year, the original board, you know, they inspect the whole pond, the percolation ponds, and the monitoring well. I hope they're not gonna be like, wait a minute, they're too far away. You know, because
They approved the locations.
you know, but the thing is, you know, like, when they came down a couple of years ago, Jose Cortez, he go like, this well is in the wrong spot. And we're like, well, we put it here because you guys put it. Not because, you know, like, we wasn't here. So now I'm more like, okay, so once I take them for a drive, they're gonna be like, wait a minute,
Why is it out there?
you know? But again, probably the best site was next to the percolation ponds. So we can see a true of what we're decharging. It will be a true value, but again, it's whatever Rumsfeld decide. I know Tommy worked a lot with them on trying to get the easement or.
It's the Regional Water Quality Control Board and us.
No, but what I'm saying is like, if a Rumsfeld will approve it at the beginning, put in the 2 wells right next to it, we didn't have to deal with getting, you know, but again, whatever is done is done, so we just gotta deal with this.
Any questions for Lloyd? How with the monitoring?
The one that I have right now, I do it every quarterly. I'm assuming that probably will be the same. I'm not sure, because before we got the new permit, I used to do it once a year. But now when we got the new permit, they decided, no, you need to do it every quarterly, and they add a lot more stuff to the center. So.
So more, you're testing for more.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Appreciate it, Roy. Thanks for all your work on it. Yeah, go ahead, guys.
So the report, the quarterly report, can we see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can send it to you or the whole board.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Just make it part of your report.
That's fine.
get it in the.
That's fine. So what we're doing, like every time I get That is simple. My reporting for the wells, I will include it on my report here so you guys can see it
Add
in
it
your sheets.
and have, your, Jessica add it to the packet.
Sure, yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And Trey put a comment on the conversation about the monitoring wells. He says this information indicates mounding from infiltration of treated wastewater is isolated to the immediate vicinity of the percolation ponds.
Okay. Mounding is kind of a yucky verb.
Yeah, that's a new term. And now the monthly financial report.
All right. Cool. So Esmeralda, you can scroll along if you like. But here you have in the packet the financial report from May. So at the end of May, we had about 6.8 million in our bank accounts. That includes only about 60,000 left of the 2021 bond fund since we purchased the William Bauer property. Yay. Looking through our monthly profit and loss, revenues, water commodity was about 5% lower than expected. You know, we've had a wet and cooler year so far. We did have over $13,000 in construction water sales for the Ocotillo solar project. Sewer was pretty on point. We have now made an agreement with Wormers on the laundromat, so his fees have gone up. So we'll get a little bit more town center revenue. Property taxes, kind of on par. If you look at the 1%, it looks like we're about $25,000 more than budgeted. So maybe property values are going up in the area. So we can start getting some extra non-rate revenue, which is always fun. On the operations end, the water side, we did purchase a new generator. I haven't capitalized that yet, but so right now it's in their expenses there, but that's why that number is a little high. Roy's finally starting to spend some money. It's like he's only at 70,000 of his 124,000 budget, so he has money for his muffin monster and whatnot in there. Electricity is still high. Me and Diana were talking about the bills today. We're going to do a little more analysis on that. Everything else was kind of as expected. On the groundwater management income or expenses, we did pay our second installment of pumping fees plus the additional assessment. So all of our water master fees for this runs through water year 23, so through October, was 76,000. We budgeted 100. Legal expenses, about $4,000. The tax expense, we did not have the Intera invoice at the time of this report, so that is understated right there, but we'll update it next month. That left us with a net operations income of 103,000 for May. On the CIP, let's see, bond funded, so total cost so far for the William Bauer acquisition was 1.346 million. That includes the legal fees and the ESA. And going on just a little bit. The twin tanks, we just got a new billing for that, so there was no progress billing during May. But that's all grant fundable, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And then the monitoring wells are pretty much finished. We have spent 220,000. That does include all the easements, and there were a lot of legal fees for that, which was not included in the grant ask. So just letting you know that. And going forward on the balance sheet, you'll see some big changes. Now that our fiscal year 22 audit was approved, I went in and did all the adjusting entries, mostly related to capitalizing assets and some deferred resources with the retirement plans. Also, the amortization cost of the bonds were recognized. So just kind of getting us to match in line with the audit. Then we have a list of all significant expenses during the period, all the checks written for the period, and then our groundwater management recap detail, which I already kind of went over, so I'll spare you on that. Ocotillo Solar, I got the well read yesterday for their bulk water. They still have just under 5 acre-feet left of their contract, so they should be finishing that off soon. That's it on the finance reports. I'll give my staff report if nobody has any questions, or I will pause for questions. All right.
Go forward.
So outside of that, thank you all for helping us get the audit approved. Spent a day doing all the closing entries on that. Neil's already bothering me for the next fiscal year. I'm coming back here. But this week, it's the last week of the fiscal year, so I'm very deep in the GL, getting all my journal entries, reconciling CIP accounts, kind of anything that would cause a red flag. I'm trying to make sure everything looks nice and happy for a easy and smooth audit. As Tammy mentioned with the cybersecurity and IT committee, we did have another meeting with CISA. So last year they came and they did our vulnerability assessment, which focused on our internal computer network, so what the office uses, our email, our website, any external facing things. Now we're moving on to an assessment on our OT network, which is operations technology. So that would be like the SCADA, it's pretty much just the SCADA system. So they needed some reports, kind of a history of all the pings to that modem. So Travis had to actually put in a new switch there in order to collect that data. So he did that, and I did upload that data to them yesterday. It was, gosh, like a dozen files that were 5 megabytes each. So it took some time, but they got it. In addition, some network diagrams and stuff. So what they're going to be doing is kind of the same process they did before, where they try to hack into us from outside, and then they're going to come in for a day and see if, through the operations computer network over there, they can access the SCADA and try to cause any havoc. So it's a great test. It's a really awesome resource that our federal government has for us to utilize all these for free. You just heard about all the federal computers getting hacked in the last few weeks, so it's pretty scary. But and CalPERS. Yeah. So we try to do whatever we can to keep secure. We still get funky emails here and there. That's great at forwarding those to me. Yeah. So we are trying our best on every front. It's pretty scary out there. And then we did get, just yesterday, Jeff forwarded to me that the state has mostly approved our budget adjustment for the tank and motor grant. So now I can get together a reimbursement request. I think it's up to $1.1 million right now that we've spent, up 1.1997. So we can request for reimbursement, except for the twin tanks portion. They still want to hold back until they get the land swap all approved. But I will be doing a reimbursement request on that probably next week. And I think that's all I got right now. Any questions?
And thank you on that grant. The first approval was 2.08 million. And the bids came in at 2.8, and then David we got a kind of a second bite at the apple, and David added more traditional engineering expenses, overhead expenses to get us up to 3.34, I think was the final number, so. And yeah, we have to wait for the land swap, but that's okay, that's always been part of the plan, I think the land swap for the skate park, even though that's notoriously slow, but we're still on track to get it done get that land swap process done in 2 years, so we're probably a year or so away from having the land swap. But all these agreements are set up to where the schedule allows us to complete the land swap and submit the reimbursables before the grant period ends. So March 2025, finish the land swap.
Let's go, let's.
Yeah.
Hire before you.
Yeah.
He's really turned out to be great anyway.
Oh,
I was afraid of him when I first heard him. It was just one guy does everything in the state. I was like,
No,
yeah,
he's
no,
really
he's really cool. Really
Well, he's retired, I think he's working very hard, which is scary.
Oh, and I'm pretty sleepy.
Don't let him go.
One more housekeeping item on the board meeting IT. I got a comment that it's difficult to hear from Gina to Diane. So if you board members could speak up. Jeff can hear fine. I think it's because our microphone points that way. So we might need to play with microphones and stuff for the next meeting.
So we should try to talk to that.
Yeah, talk to the giant eye.
Okay, go ahead. I think it was only last month that we submitted the Prop 68 reimbursement, so we haven't had to or heard anything.
I've got crickets.
Okay.
I almost sent hey Chris, how's it going email.
Yeah.
And I just didn't yesterday for some reason. I don't know why, but I did not click send. Is everything okay? So maybe I'll click send today. Just to rattle their tape. But we have not heard anything back up.
Any other questions for Jessica? Thank you, as usual, for your awesome. And now, administrative.
Okay, yeah, we had some things going on this past month. The staff and I were working pretty hard on getting identifying the low landscape and no landscape homes in Borrego. And just as a reminder, the purpose of this project was to help determine the water usage per home. If they were hooked up to sewer, that water would be going into the sewer. So we identified about 650 homes, and we compiled 5 years worth of usage per home and set that off to do it for their continuation of their project. So that is all done. One good thing that came out, well, a lot of things came out, good things came out of that. One of the good things is that we are also able to identify which homes have pools. So we were able to update our system for we just entered who had pools on the account. So if for some reason they had a leak or something, we could say, oh, hey, we noticed you have a pool. It would be like you're on that filler. It's just more information helps us with the customer. So Laura did a ride-along with, I'm not sure who she went on a ride-along with last month with the crew. She did 2 routes. So she was able to do some meter reading and really get an understanding of what the guys do in the field, which then in turn also helps her understand how the works. So she enjoyed doing that. And then let's see, this next month, or actually this week, we'll be putting a newsletter out. A couple of main points of the newsletter is to address the upcoming rate increase that's effective July 1st, that will reflect on the August billing. And this was due to the Prop 18 study back in 2021, which, so we're going to be increasing water 5% and 4% for sewer. We're also letting our customers know that the annual CCNR report or the Consumer Confidence Report is going to be available on July 1st. So that will be available online and in the office as well. We're about ready to build what we call our 79 accounts, and these are the once a year billing for standby fees to homes that are located in our CSD. So they will be getting that bill this month with the ultimate goal is to put these on our tax roll so we don't remember to this billing once a year. So hopefully this will be the last time. So Esmeralda, she's been diligent. She was working on the request for qualifications for the AMI project for the automated meter reading. So she went through a packet and got it all nice and pretty and worked really hard on that. I'm still waiting to hear back from SAGE. Last month I reported that I was looking into hopefully changing our rates so that we can pay less on our bills. They looked at it and they're re-looking at it one more time to see if we can change our rates to save some money on it. I'm also working with AT&T. They have a program called FirstNet. So FirstNet is a dedicated or prioritized network, and it's really meant for first responders, but they have now included utility companies in this. And we have been approved, so now we're just kind of going through the contract and making sure it is going to work for us, which will save us probably about $1,200 or $2,000 a year going through FirstNet, and then we will also get prioritized network over like the general line in case of an emergency. So that will be really good. For BPA, this as a recap, we have 5.3 BPA which have been purchased with 2.8 still pending. So this hasn't changed since March. So with paid and pending BPA, this leaves us still with 63.9 BPA remaining. It hasn't really been any movement since March.
And Diane, just because I got someone confused about this, we don't sell the BPA, we sell access to water. Right?
Yes, water.
And I just recently had explained this to somebody, so I just wanted to mention
Right.
it. Yes, we don't sell our BPA, we sell access to water.
Sure, right now, our water supply.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Yeah. And then we just closed out fiscal year end, I think Jessica mentioned, we're just getting all the checks paid this week and hopefully be a nice smooth transition to the next fiscal year. And that's all I have, otherwise everything's going.
Do you guys hold a fiscal New Year's party?
Well, usually Diana's on vacation, but she's not this year, so we're gonna have to. We'll take her close to lunch.
We're having a step meeting tomorrow.
I think it deserves a celebration. Yeah, I think so too. So, what would be different in the SDG rates that you're looking at? I mean, is there a different way of measuring your electricity use, or?
Just a different rate plan. Yeah, they have different rate plans, time of use plans, commercial plans, ag plans, and SDG for, I don't know if it has to do with, I don't know if individual accounts have it, but for business accounts, they have a button on there that will look at different plans and making sure that you're on the right plan. So you can change your plan. And I was very tempted to just click the button and say go, but I thought I could ask first. But so, yeah, it's just going on a different plan.
Interesting. Yeah, I noticed your utility rates are really gone up.
Right.
The new AT&T FirstNet thing will be for all internet access here in the building and.
So initially, we are just looking at the crew cell phones, hotspots, and our two SCADA tablets. We do have an option of getting what's called a mobile broadband device, which would be able to have, I guess, internet. But I want to put that aside for the moment because that just opens up another, another avenue, which, I wanted to focus on the cell phones first. So that is a possibility that we can get the first internet.
I do like the idea of having cell phones. That would probably be good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And now we have, according to this, 4E is our legal counsel report.
If needed.
Do you have anything to tell us, Steve?
I don't think so. I could tell you about the big U.S. Supreme Court case involving an Indian tribe in Arizona, but that's probably not too relevant to Borrego. So.
Yeah, well, I've heard about it and I feel very sad for them.
Okay, well, nothing to report then. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We'll be talking later. Is our general manager.
Here we go. Okay, first on my list was the final business agreement that Jessica mentioned for the tank and diesel motor replacement. 2 thumbs up on the extra $1 million plus on the final budget value. We're reviewing the documents. We have 12 days to respond. I think everything's going to be fine, so no action on our part. We're happy with the 3.4 plus $1 million budget. Okay. Let's see, on the grant/water bond topic, if you recall, what was it 1 or 2 meetings ago, our friends from Best Creek were here to talk about future grant opportunities, and Cyrus was talking about the state legislature and the movement towards a water bond being put on the ballot in the near future. And I think we all agree that it'd be good if EWD can try to get save a spot for some EWD projects in this water bond, or to make sure that the rules that are going to be created are conducive and supportive of EWD competing well when this water bond were to become reality. To make all this happen, you need to get in contact with, I'm not sure how many legislators there are in the state, but you add one to whatever it is, and he's the guy. His name is Kip Lepper. He's a staff member, but he controls, I won't say everything in the state legislature, but he has a tremendous amount of influence upon kind of what happens in terms of budgetary related issues. And it's always been Cyrus's dream to get a one-on-one meeting with Kip Lepper to talk about EWD. Just turns out that Jim Max cashed in a couple of chits with Tony Atkins and got a meeting with Cyrus and Kip Lepper. Cyrus, as of last Friday, was walking on clouds because he finally is getting his meeting, face-to-face meeting or phone call with Kip Lepper, the guy that really runs the state legislature allegedly. Within my words, I mean, I don't know the man, but.
Is he a staffer?
Yeah, he's a
specific.
No.
Or just at large?
Yeah, at large, but he's very, very influential. So Cyrus is very happy that we're going to get a chance to at least tell the Borrego story and make sure that either there's something in it for Borrego, or like I say, at least the rules are conducive for us to compete well going forward with that water bond. This is also kind of grant related. The impact of the census, and when that new census came in with Borrego Springs average median income, average household income and median household income going up significantly. I'm still yet to find an expert in that area, but our friends find someone who can help with this task of confirming that the numbers are right. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly what we can ask for. That's part of the point of trying to get an expert on hand to help us figure out how we can hopefully change the numbers, because it matters on almost everything. There's a Bureau of Reclamation grant that I was just looking at, and it is totally dependent on median household income. And you can get 75% grant funded if your median household income is 60% or 50% of the state average, and it goes down to as low as 15% if your median household income is at 90% of the state average. Jess, you and I were looking at it yesterday, we're pretty much at the state average.
What is this table?
84 and some change, and we were 83 and change. So just really.
It's hard to imagine.
So we're still looking at trying to, I'm still not sure what we'll be asking for, but I'm just we're trying to find an expert that can help us figure out exactly what we do in this case. We had a dramatic change in the median household income all over the most recent
So
census.
Jeff, on that, it occurred to me today that using school data, school district data might be helpful in making our case on that. I think currently like 98% of the kids in school qualify for free lunches. So, if you've got that and there must be a formula that says for every kid in school, there are, 3 other household members. If you multiply that out and see, wait, there should be 800 or 1,000 people of Hispanic descent, for example. And we only see 300 on the census. Anyway, that's hard data, the school data could be helpful.
Yeah, and I'd love to get to the point that I would know the person to submit that data to that can hopefully make some sort of change. That's the goal. To try to. Let's see, and then I guess last but not least, fouling activities have begun on our property. David Bauer has started on his 55 acres of grass. When we were out there last week, he had 2 trees done, maybe 3. He's out there. That's he started that tree removal process today, this week. But they have removed, I think, 5 or 6 40-foot containers worth of the plastic hose.
Wow, that's the stuff.
5 containers.
I'm glad I did. I'm glad he's doing that.
Yeah. I don't know how many trees there are in the total. I need to ask him what that number is, but it's my farm. Just on the road. Look that way, as far as you can see, and that way, as far as you can see, it's crazy.
Got that tree.
Most of that fallowing activities have begun. We'll take you out there, I can show everybody here. It's going to be going on for a while.
Yeah.
No rush.
I would like to see what's going on.
That's it.
Is there any interest on the part of the UCI study to?
Oh, yeah, good point. I kind of reminded Sam and Andy, because we've done that farmland fallowing study is a water master project, part of Prop 68. So I just got the UCI and Land IQ, right, are helping solve the water master stuff. So I reminded them that, boy, we have any possible phase of the life and death cycle of a tree you might want out there. We have trees that are fully alive, trees that are fully dead. We can give you brush piles, chips, whole trees, space to try things. Because they were asking place to do a list of property owners' names. I'm thinking, good luck. Just trying to sample their wells, one thing, and say, hey, can we cut down some of your trees and borrow some of your land to do some environmental experiments? So I think we can provide a huge benefit, and no skin on our nose. I would love to use it, because I think that's all part of the kind of story to the fallow property is we want to return it to something useful someday. Oh, let me add one thing. So the Bauer issue has evolved. It's kind of gone from water rights and fallowing to, okay, the future. And then what could the Bauer property become? That's kind of getting out of my area of expertise, right? And so I know we had visions in the past, Kathy remembers maybe of acquiring the Jensen property. It's a little further west, surrounded by farmland, and there was a possibility maybe some equestrian uses there, maybe some parking lots and some picnic tables and some things like that. And, right. And so, not that this would be a DWP expense, but it's like, okay, what could this property become? Sure, we could do nothing, fallow it, keep the fences up, and let it sit for the next 1,000 years. chip and spread, and actually David Bauer's hauling off some of the chips now. There's some economic benefit because the chipper works a lot cheaper when he takes the chips. He can take them for fuel solutions. David Bauer, God bless him, if we had to do these activities and we prevailing wage, big documents for removal and whatnot. Difficult and a big challenge. Thank you, Mr. Bauer. And actually, we will probably close escrow Friday. David will be paid. On Thursday, David will likely be paid on Friday. Both.
Very excited.
Did Sam and Andy seem interested in?
Oh, that's right. I was like, no, I'm sorry. Let me finish my story. I kind of do like a plane, skip where you work. So I reached out to the park people. So Ray, the state parks, and Bree at ADM said, hey, this project is not kind of getting out of my area of expertise. I'm good at following and tree. No, not good. I can understand that. But what could that land become in terms of future park use? I don't know. So I need some help. So are you ADF? Are you state park interested in talking about it or not? And either way is fine. Like I say, we can let the land go and chip and spread, and it can become Viking Ranch. That's cool. Or maybe it could be a equestrian parking lot, picnic tables, or gosh knows what in the future. But I need help, right? And so there's, Bree and Ray know all about the potential funding sources, and they can, what was the term? Visualize, that was the term I thought of, but just come up with potential concepts for what the land could ultimately become. So the good news is, yes, they both want to participate. Like I said, we will probably likely take a back seat. This would be more of that helping, finding grant opportunities and other possibilities. And so we're having a meeting on August 3rd. 6 week delay. It was Ray's schedule this stuff. Good meeting time for, but so I'll be meeting with Bree, Ray, they'd like to see the following activities to know what's going to be left when we're done, to know in theory what they would deal with going forward.
All right, I can actually get back to when we talked to Sam and Ian about they say they were interested in using any of the property for.
They said I need to talk to Land IQ and UC,
okay.
which I said I reached out to them. They were bugging me about getting property owners' names, so I went through the whole look at that. So Sam and Andy know that very well.
Excellent. All right. If that is everything.
So early, huh?
A land speed record for us. So, yeah. So this will be the end meeting. This part of our meeting, we're going to go into closed session in a few minutes. What do you guys think? About 10 minutes? Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, go.
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you. You are related at all to Vanessa? How?
Nice.
Your niece.
Good night, everybody.
Well, we're
Yeah.
families.
Oh, good questions.
She just graduated from Temple State, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
What's she hoping to do next?
PFAS.
I know, but, yeah.